Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today I'm going to be doing my weekly wrap-up for October 20th. We finished this week Mary Elizabeth Braddon's The Doctor's Wife, the group read for Victober. I had talked about this novel last week in my wrap-up as well. I really struggled with this. I wanted to like this book, and I really had quite a struggle. It started out well enough, as I talked about last week, and I thought that it was actually going to be a humorous novel. It started out kind of humorously. It was originally published in serial form, and many in the discussion group suggested that the uneven nature of the narrative might have been as a result of the fact that it was written for serial publication. And that kind of made a lot of sense to me, that it was written in many installments, and so there were these sort of great lulls in the action, and then these kind of peaks. That it may have been a function of just the way it was originally published. The pace certainly did pick up for me toward the end of the novel, and I felt more engaged in the story again. For me, this time around, I think reading it slowly on the group schedule actually took away from my experience of the novel. Normally I don't have a problem with that, with a schedule, but it just seemed like there were a bunch of days where it was just a slog to get through the two chapters for the day. Finally, towards the end, I just decided to read a whole big chunk of the book and finish it, and that is when the pace also seemed to pick up quite a bit, and I felt more engaged. But sadly, I would have to say that this one was not really a success for me. I would read Mary Elizabeth Braddon again, but I don't know that I would revisit this novel. On the other hand, I reread this week Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, and I read this in an afternoon one day this week, and this was pure delight. This was for the prompt to read some Victorian plays created by one of the Victober co-hosts, Roz, at Scallydandling about the book. She was sponsoring the drama or theater prompt. The Importance of Being Earnest is a farcical comedy of manners about two young men who lead really double lives and take on false identities in order to evade social and personal obligations. Both men, Algernon Moncrief and Jack Worthing, are also pursuing love interests under false identities. Each one of these men at one time or another pretends to be someone named Ernest. It's impossible to talk about the plot of this play in a way that makes sense without giving away too much. In short, Algernon is visited by a friend, a man named Ernest Worthing, who is really visiting because he hopes to propose to Algernon's cousin, Gwendolyn Fairfax. Algernon will not even consider the possibility of his cousin marrying Ernest until Ernest explains why his cigarette case is inscribed "From little Cecily to her dear Uncle Jack." Eventually, Worthing admits that he is leading a double life, that his niece, believes him to be named Jack or John Worthing, but that he pretends to have a wastrel of a brother named Earnest who lives in London, whom he must tend to from time to time. This is actually nothing more than a deception to allow him to escape from obligations in the country and go off to the city and have a good time. Once in London, he assumes the identity of Earnest. Algernon then admits that he too carries on a similar deception by pretending to have a sick friend in the country named Bunbury, whom he visits from time to time, mostly when he wants to avoid any kind of unwelcome social engagement or other obligation. Now, to add to the absurdity, Jack proposes to the cousin Gwendolen, who says that she can only accept his proposal because she believes his name is Earnest. She goes on to say that her ideal, quote, has always been to love someone by the name of Earnest. There is something in the name that inspires absolute confidence, close quote. Gwendolen's mother, the formidable Lady Bracknell, will not hear of her daughter marrying Earnest, however, because she learns that he was adopted after having been found in a handbag deposited at Victoria Station in London as an infant. And she informs him that he is not to have any further contact with her daughter. In a series of strange and farcical twists, Algernon next takes a trip to Jack's house in the country with the intention of meeting Jack's niece Cecily, where he too proclaims to be Earnest, pretending here to be Jack's wastrel brother, Ernest Worthing, in order to woo Cecily. And that's all that I'm going to say about this farcical plot. Wilde is satirizing the Victorian emphasis on social class determined by birth, and he's satirizing attitudes toward marriage. He highlights the ridiculousness of Gwendolen's determination to marry someone named Earnest, and also the absurdity of her mother's refusal even to consider anyone as a partner for her daughter who isn't of noble birth. There are also all kinds of plays on the word earnest. Earnest, E-R-N-E-S-T, the name, and earnest, E-A-R-N-E-S-T, as an adjective describing a quality. Being earnest, as in being serious, determined, eager, is not nearly as important in this play as being named Earnest, E-R-N-E-S-T, which obviously means absolutely nothing at all. Wilde satirizes the marriage plot so common in Victorian literature, novels and plays, where the end game is always supposed to be successful marriage. There are many roadblocks to successful marriages in this play, most of them total absurdities getting in the way of people being together. Wilde was also a leader in the aesthetic movement and was especially interested in the relationship between life and art, something that he also explores in his novel Picture of Dorian Gray. In this play, there are huge conflicts between life and art. Both main characters, Jack and Algernon, create art, or artifice, really, in their fictional identities in order to mask their true identities and their escapades and to shirk their responsibilities to loved ones. Actually, all of the characters, the young women as well, create fictions in their lives in order to deceive others or to create a reality that is more like fiction. Wilde explores these questions about whether art or fiction imitates life or whether life imitates art or fiction. He ultimately seems to suggest that life itself is quite simply the making of art, the making of fiction. It's an absolutely absurd play in which Wilde pokes fun at most aspects of Victorian society, and it's an absolute delight. One of my favorite all-time plays. Next, I have moved on to Lady Windermere's Fan, which is also included in this volume, and I'm going to finish that today. So I'll talk about that more next week. I did start this week The Picture of Dorian Gray, also by Oscar Wilde, but I haven't gotten that far yet. I'm reading this as both a Victorian novel and also as a selection for the spooky, scary skeleton readathon. But I think I'm going to start it in earnest, see what I did there, in the coming week. I have added a book to my TBR for the spooky, scary skeleton readathon, and that's Grady Hendrix's novel Horrorstor. I have had this book on my shelves for quite a while, and I had just never gotten to it. And then I heard Jack at Spreading Book Joy talk about how she read this book in an afternoon, and I thought that sounded like just the kind of book that I need to read right now after I was just really thrown by my finishing of Atwood's Oryx and Crake last week. Really, really dark banned book, and I just needed to. I needed to go someplace else after that book. So Oscar Wilde and so far Grady Hendrix have been kind of a welcome relief. Anyway, I know that I bought Horrorstor long before I had any intention of reading horror, because I didn't really start dabbling in horror, and I'm really only dabbling until May of this year, and I've had this book much longer than that on my shelves. I don't remember buying this book, but I wonder if I just bought it because the cover intrigued me, though I can't say I even remember that, because it looks like an IKEA catalog. This is a novel about a huge retail store named Oryx, which is meant to be kind of a knockoff of IKEA. It's an IKEA-like retail store with an entire culture built around it. Our main character, Amy, is an employee of the store, and she fears that she's about to be fired by her boss, whom she thinks really doesn't like her at all. But then she's asked to do an overnight shift in the store with her boss, and a couple of employees are asked to do this overnight shift because there have been very strange and unsettling things happening in the store overnight. These employees are supposed to do an overnight shift and walk around the store and see if they can figure out exactly what is going on and who is invading their store and leaving really sort of inappropriate and kind of gross things around the store. I can't tell yet if this is going to be a scary horror story or if it's more of a spoof of horror stories, because so far there have been some really humorous bits in the beginning of the novel, but I guess I'll find out soon. Also this week I started a new series of videos which will focus on books that I loved to teach. I've done 2 episodes so far, focusing on Stephen King's The Green Mile and on Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried. I'll have additional episodes in this series coming up in the coming weeks. I also designed my first original tag, which I called the BookTube Community Joy and Gratitude tag. And this was in observance of my having reached the 2,000 subscriber milestone. Something that I still can't quite believe has happened, and I'm so grateful to all of you who have subscribed. I'm so grateful for your presence here. I'll put links to all of these videos in my notes below. I hope you will consider doing my tag, whether I specifically tagged you or not. It's just an effort to spread some joy and some gratitude around. So you're all tagged. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.